Good evening. We're going to be talking about the F-11D.
Now, this is more or less the starter assault class blaster rifle, as it's not just the F-11D. Every different, I guess, not faction, but, you know, depending on if you're playing as clone troopers, depending on the area you're in and what, I guess, not class, but character you're playing, depending on if you're on the Republic or playing as a droid or etc. The weapon has actually different names, and only one of the characters, I guess, in game has access to this version, the F-11D, the one with the scope on it. You'll probably see gameplay in the background of me using the one with the scope, but the starter blaster, I guess, is actually has a different name and looks different for every type of character, but it is still the same weapon and has the same stats. So I just want to get that out of the way quickly. But yeah, it's still the same weapon, it just looks different and has a different name.
This is the starting assault blaster rifle, or I guess blaster rifle that you start with on the assault class. So this is the first one you're going to be using. It's a standard issue blaster rifle with reliable range and damage output, which is true, but there are some downsides to it. It doesn't seem that bad of a blaster. You have decent damage, decent cooling power, range is decent, and fire rate is, or rate of fire I should say, doesn't really matter, same thing, is decent, and that's all true. It's all very mediocre. This thing can do long range if you kind of needed to. It can also do short range if somewhat needed to, medium range. But the problem is that because it doesn't excel at one area, it's not really that good in one area. So it feels mediocre in just about every area. That includes where it would probably be its best, being medium-ish range, and it still feels underwhelming at medium range. At least that's to me. It probably doesn't help that this rifle doesn't have any upgrades like others do, say the A280 with its dual zoom, the improved cooling, and the improved range, or the CR2 again with reduced recoil, ion shot, and night vision, and you know, everything else having its upgrades. The F-11D doesn't have anything, mostly, well, I would assume because it's technically considered a stock weapon, I guess. It's standard, it's the starting weapon, but I don't think that's a good excuse to not have any upgrades for it. But other than that, it is the standard blaster rifle that you see from the movies a lot of the time, especially the first couple Star Wars movies where you see the clone troopers using it. It's a very iconic blaster for one, so I guess if you just want to play for more of that, I guess I don't really want to say realistic feel, but more of that, you know, a role play feel of the game, I guess, then yeah, it's a cool looking blaster for that. Not that none of the other blasters aren't in Star Wars media. I would assume they are in Star Wars media because, well, they're in the Star Wars game. I know the A280 has been seen before in the movies. That's pretty distinctual, and hell, it's been a while since I've seen some of the movies myself, so I can't really, you know, tell you exactly where it's from. But the F-11D is just a classic weapon, and when I was using this item, or I should say this weapon, it was kind of all over the place for me. It wasn't a perfect weapon, nor was it really an imperfect weapon. I found it to just be underwhelming in a lot of situations, especially with this game, with your card upgrades and stuff. A lot of people have their boosted cards and stuff with the health gain from this and that, and there's not really any cards that this can benefit from either, other than maybe expert weapons handling, which does help with the cooling. Success stats are longer and all of that, but other than that, you don't really get anything too crazy with this. Again, a lot of the assault class play that you're gonna see, well, I don't want to say a lot of it, but you're going to see people using slug vanguard or the shotgun ability with this and some other stuff. You know, I mean, it's the assault class, but it's weird to not focus on your AR too much, because again, the biggest downside is that it doesn't have any, well, mods, I should say, not really upgrades, but mods that you can equip on it. So there's nothing that you can really add to it to kind of increase certain areas of it. It is just what you get is what you get. And I think that, you know, it's good in a certain area because you have an expectation for it, but you can't expect those expectations to be too high. Maybe if you're really, really good at the game and have a lot of time played and know where to go and how to use certain things, then yeah, maybe, you know, it's a better weapon for you than me. I don't have a crap ton of time on the game, but a lot of my situations, I just felt that I was underwhelmed with the power of the weapon, I felt like it took so many more shots to hit somebody than I thought. And then weapon, I should say, the projectile velocity feels a little slower, especially going against, you know, jetpack players that are using the class that has the jetpack on it, the rocket troopers, I think, or whatever. It's a bit harder to hit them sometimes, even if you're pre-aiming a little bit. You know, you have to aim in front to hit your shots. And even when hitting headshots with this, it takes like 3 headshots to kill somebody, which is a bit more than you would expect, to be honest. With something that has a decent amount of damage like this, it does kind of just feel underwhelming in a lot of areas. I would much prefer really almost any other rifle in this, or I don't want to say rifle, but blaster in this situation. Again, it's a fun blaster to use because it is iconic to the Star Wars series and movies and just Star Wars in general, I feel. But again, it just is so underwhelming in a lot of situations personally to me. Again, I wouldn't call it a bad weapon, but for the lineup of weapons we have on the assault class, it just feels, well, mediocre at best, to be blatantly honest with you. Again, I'm not the best player in the world, so maybe there's some amount of bias there. I mean, there's bias in everything anybody says because it's based off your own experience for the most part. But again, I don't fully hate the weapon. I just feel underwhelmed in certain situations with it, and just, you know, even at most not having mods for it is kind of a bit of a letdown, since every other basically weapon that isn't stock, I guess, has mods equipped, especially for assault. All the other weapons have mods that you can put on, so it just kind of feels weird. I don't know if there's a specific reason why they didn't add mods to it, but it just kind of feels lacking even more, especially because you don't have mods. You could still get away with using the weapon, especially if you know, are just getting into the game and have never played it before, or starting over and you don't have any of the other weapons unlocked yet. Then I think it's fine to use for an extent. Once you start using the weapons, you probably might not want to come back to this one, especially once you unlock the A280. Yeah, the damage is a little lower on it, but it does have the 3 burst, which is really nice, and the range is higher. The cooling power is lower. Overall, it's a bit lower stat wise, to be honest, in general, but it just feels better. And then you have the mods, which, you know, add a little bit more to it, which help. The CR2 is preferably my favorite SL rifle. Just, I don't know, I just kind of like it. It's more of an SMG, but that's not what this video is about. It's about the F-11D, and yeah, it's like a weird, just mediocre, very, very, very mid-range weapon. Like I said, personally, you could get away with using it, and you could have some fun with it, you know, for classes and stuff. But I would definitely take this weapon lightly, and if you're going to use it, I wouldn't get super close to other players like maybe you would with the CR2. But again, I wouldn't use it at a really, really long range either. It's again, like I said, a weird area. Like, you almost want to use it at a medium to close range, but you also kind of want to pick your fights. You don't want to immediately try to run onto a point or run into the middle of a group of people, because you're not really going to get a whole lot of use out of the weapon. You might be able to get a kill or 2. It helps a lot more when you're in a group or around a couple of people. It's not really amazing for soloing either, which is just goes to show how really mediocre this weapon is in its situation. It really has to be used like you see it in the movies, surrounded by other troopers on your team, because then at least if other people are shooting at the same enemies as you, their shots will potentially hit the same enemies that you're hitting, and then they will do more damage, and it'll be easier to take out the enemies in general. Who would have thought that if more people shoot at enemy, they die faster? But that really is how I see it a lot of the time. It's, again, not a perfect weapon, but it's not a bad weapon. You just have to really pick your fights with it to an extent. You can get some longer range kills, but it's going to be a little bit difficult, especially if the enemy is just moving or they walk out of the way, because again, it takes 3 headshots to kill with this thing, at least on a normal health trooper for the most part. So it's just kind of wacky to use. It's hard for me to really use this thing in a consistent kind of way for the most part, and I wouldn't put that down to the blame of the weapon entirely, nor would I put down, that's why I don't really want to call the weapon bad either in a way. That's why I keep calling it mediocre, because it's kind of hard to get into a lobby and not be like dominated by somebody who's a max level. Wasn't super useful to gauge how well I could use this thing, because again, I'm not the greatest player, and it kind of sucks getting into lobbies and just getting destroyed by people that are so much better than you. You kind of can't really put a comparison on weapons, but again, in those lobbies, like against those players, I just feel like I would be doing better with other weapons, and I have played in similar lobbies with other weapons, and I felt like I've done better. So I guess that's where my stance is on this weapon being mediocre, because I feel like in certain situations I would get away with not dying or being able to get more kills or saving myself in certain situations if I was using a different weapon. Another problem that I have with this weapon is its bloom is really large. Maybe not bloom, I guess you can consider it the spray pattern in air quotations. Some games consider it bloom to an extent, but it's basically the pattern at which your the bullet will go, you know, how far away it will stray from going straight down the middle. And that's the problem, is when you're full auto firing this thing, the bloom gets a bit worse and the spray pattern increases wider. And a lot of the time, if you're trying to kind of even not full auto, but just, you know, be a little less conscious, a little less tap fire friendly with this thing, your bullets are going to start missing. If you're holding down that trigger button or holding down the left click and trying to get a bit of a full auto fire in there, it works fine enough when you're close range. You can kind of full auto without having to worry to miss. But then again, you have the problem of if the person is moving, you know, not in a straight line and actually kind of dodging and stuff, your bullets are going to miss. And I think the bloom just doesn't help at all, because your shots are kind of starting to go in random areas instead of straight. So you kind of can't really predict where your shots are going to go. And, you know, that's another huge downside to this weapon, is you can't really go full auto with it, especially at medium range where this would be expected to excel at, which kind of sucks. So you're kind of like in this weird gray area where you can't really, I don't want to say you can't, you know, I do full auto it in my clips, but you're not going to have the best accuracy, obviously, but it's just not going to be as good, you know, full auto at medium range where you'd expect it to be good. And then at long range, well, you know, obviously you're going to have even bigger problems at long range going full auto. Most of your shots are probably gonna miss or go off to the side, but that's just kind of a quirk of this weapon, I guess, that you have to deal with. I guess you could consider it a quirk. I'm not really a fan of it. I wish you could get away with, you know, full auto just a little bit with this thing, but it's really difficult to really get a full burst off with this thing and really have all those shots land, especially at anything higher than short range, honestly. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I have to get used to it more or something, as if I'm ever going to use it again. But tap firing, that single burst fire, seems to work out a little bit better in a lot of situations, it seems. But I don't know, I still end up full autoing this thing a lot of the time. So I guess if you just have the ability to hit your shots better than me, maybe the weapon will be better for you. But overall, I feel like the F-11D is a solid enough weapon that you can get some use out of it. I wouldn't say it's like you're at a massive disadvantage. And like I said, for a starting weapon, I think it's fine enough because, well, you don't have anything else to base your opinion off of when you're starting off the game or starting off the character until you unlock more weapons. But this is definitely one of those weapons where, you know, once you unlock the A280, I feel like you're just going to migrate to that and use that more. And then once you unlock the CR2, you might switch off of the CR2 just because of the fact it's more SMG, shorter range. But due to that, I feel like personally I would just end up using the A280, but who knows? I guess I'll have to see once I dive into other weapons more. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you want to see more, I would be down to do that. I appreciate it if you're still here, you know, just a little short video talking about this weapon. And I would love to do all of the weapons in the Assault class and maybe just do one big video reviewing all of them, or potentially all of them separately. So if you would like to see that, let me know in the comments or by leaving a like on the video. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one.